Okay, next up, we've got rational numbers and irrational numbers. So a rational number is a set of rational numbers. The set of rational numbers is the set of numbers that can be expressed in the form P over Q, where both P and Q are integers and Q does not equal 0. Note, any rational number can be represented by a terminating decimal or by a repeating decimal. So, rational. Actually, let's talk about irrational so we can compare. So now then, if we've got rational, next on the topic is irrational. So irrational numbers is the set of irrational numbers is a subset of the real numbers whose, oops, sorry, my laundry's done. We're going to keep going. I'll deal with my laundry later. Where was I? Okay, so it's a subset of the real numbers whose elements cannot be written in a ratio of two integers. All right, so what the heck's a ratio? A ratio, fraction, right? A ratio. Whenever you hear, right, like 2-to-1 odds, that kind of thing, ratio just means fraction. Okay, so basically it's I'll go with opposite. Opposite of rational numbers. So if rational numbers have to be a fraction, a terminating decimal, or repeating decimal, basically you got all the other numbers in here. So an irrational number cannot be written as a terminating decimal or a repeating decimal. Okay, so what that means is typically in irrational numbers you usually have square roots or any kind of root. Remember, that's this thing, right? Usually with a number on it. For purposes of this class, if there's a square root in the number, irrational, okay? And then on the next page, we've got to look at other things. But remember, rational can be a fraction, or it can be a fraction. Irrational cannot be a fraction. So moving to the top of the next page, we've got a couple of examples. Let me move it to where you can see everything on the screen. There we go. Okay. So we've got 3.8, 3 pi, and negative 0.6. We're going to say if it's terminating decimal, a repeating decimal, or non-terminating. And then we're going to go the extra step to say, is it rational or irrational? So 3.8, what do you think? Terminating, repeating, or non-terminating? Okay, well, let's talk about what the heck is terminating. Think about it. If you're terminated from a job, what does that mean? It means you don't work there anymore. You got fired, right? You are no longer an employee with that company. So it is game over, end. So if a decimal terminates, it stops. See, if we look at C, right, what does this little bar over the 6 mean? It means that it's 0.6666666666666 over and over and over, forever and ever and ever, infinity, right? So the little bar over this, remember, just means that 6 is repeating. So, well, I guess while we're on here, looking at C, since I kind of am on the topic, terminating decimal, repeating decimal, or non-terminating? Hopefully you said repeating. So this is a repeating decimal. Okay, so what is this one? Non-terminating. There we go. Sorry, or terminating. Sorry, I lied to you. Terminating decimal. I had a brain fart there. Terminating decimal. All right. So this is a repeating decimal, a terminating decimal. So what do you think this one is an example of? The non-terminating decimal. So if terminating means to stop, to end, what does non-terminating mean? Oh, also, I'm so sorry. I know, I recognize my handwriting is atrocious. I will try to do better than this, but that says non-terminating. All right, so pi. Remember, pi is approximately Emphasis on the approximately 3.14. But remember, it's actually a non-terminating decimal. It means it goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and always, right? Does not stop. Another number that we are going to talk about later on in this semester is E. It's approximately 2.7. I always forget if it's 8.1. I think it's 8.21. Let's see. I always have a little dyslexic moment whenever I'm trying to think of E. Come on, calculator. Oops, wrong button. E. Oops, okay. E to the first. 2.718. Ah, see, my brain always wants to flip it. 2.718. So that's E. We're going to talk about E later. So now that we've categorized which they are into, go back to our rational and irrational numbers and tell me if they were rational or irrational. So pause the video for a hot second. When you're done, press play. All right, so remember that if we can write it as a terminating decimal or repeating decimal, we are rational. And again, even though this is a repeating decimal, this can be written as a fraction. Okay, this is a terminating decimal. Again, it can be written as a fraction. Non-terminating cannot be written as a fraction, so this is irrational. So to tack on to the irrational discussion, if you've got the square root, but also if you've got something with e or pi on it, just automatically irrational. So list 3 numbers that are rational numbers but not integers. Remember, an integer is just an addition of numbers to the what set? The whole numbers. So remember, an integer is a whole number but with negative numbers attached to it. So pause the video, write a few down, and let's see if maybe we overlap. I know that's kind of a big ask, but who knows? Okay, so 3 numbers that are rational. I'm going to go with like 2/3 because that's a fraction. How about 0.3 repeating because that is also 1/3. See how it can be written as the repeating decimal or the fraction. And then if I get a little, let's say, I don't know, 4/5. And again, that is also 0.8. Oh, 2/3. I guess I kind of cheated. That is also 0.6 repeating. But remember, yeah. So decimal or a repeating fraction.